I have walked a cold beach at first light and found men lying on the sand who had beaten the whole ocean to reach it, swum or crawled or dragged themselves through miles of freezing sea, past the point where any man should have had a stroke left in him, and actually made it, all the way to solid ground, and died there, on the sand, feet above the tide line, with the water behind them and the land beneath them and nothing left in the world to kill them, except the shore itself. The men who reached land were, more often than you would ever believe, the first of all of us to die. I know how backward that sounds. Stay with me, because there is a lie the sea tells a drowning man, and it is the cruelest lie of all, and it is the shore. All the long fight in the water, a man fixes his whole soul on that line of land, and he tells himself the same thing every drowning man has ever told himself. If I can only reach it, I am saved. Land is safety. Everyone knows that. Solid ground under your feet is the end of the danger, and it is not true. For a man who has been in that water, who has spent everything he had to cross it, the beach is not the end of the fight. It is the beginning of a second one, and it is the harder of the two, and almost no one is ready for it, because almost no one knows it is coming. The men who lived were the ones who understood that reaching land had saved nothing yet. The men who died were the ones who believed they had made it, and what I am going to tell you is the thing that separated them, because it will sound like the last thing on earth that could matter, and it is the whole of it. Let me tell you who I am, so you know I am not guessing. I have spent my life on the water and in the small boats, and I have done the grim work of walking ashore after a wreck, looking for the living among the drowned. And the thing that broke something in me the first time, and every time after, was not the men we found in the water. It was the men we found on the sand, men who had won, men who had done the impossible thing and reached the land, and then lain down on it, and never got up. I could not understand it. They were out, they were ashore. What in God's name had killed a man who had already beaten the sea? It took an old hand, and too many cold mornings, before I understood that the sea does not stop at the waterline, and that the most dangerous ground a spent man ever crosses is the dry ground he thought was safe. The first one I ever found undid me. A young man, strong by the look of him, lying on his side up the beach with his knees drawn up like a child asleep, dry sand beneath him, the tide long gone out, and not a wound on him anywhere. I stood over him, certain there had been some mistake, that he must only be sleeping, because no man dies on dry land with the whole sea behind him and his own 2 legs to carry him off it. The old hand who was with me, a man who had walked more of these beaches than I had years, did not even crouch to check him. He read the marks in the sand, the long drag of a man hauling himself up out of the surf, and then the place where the dragging stopped and the lying down began. And he said, quiet, the way you say a thing you have said too many times. He made it, and then he rested. That was all. He made it, and then he rested. And walking on, he told me the thing I am telling you now, because there was never any other way it got past, not written, in any book, not taught in any school, only handed from one man who had read it in the sand to the next who would one day have to. So hold this, and keep hold of it. How does a man cross the whole killing ocean under his own power, reach the solid ground he fought for, and die there on the sand, feet from safety, while weaker men who never stopped fighting somehow lived? That is the riddle, and the answer is 3 things, and every one of them arrives wearing the face of rest and relief and safety earned. Here is the first, and it is the one that takes the strongest. A man crossing that water is not swimming on strength, not by the end. His strength went hours ago. He is crossing on will alone, on the animal refusal to die, the thing that floods a man and drives his failing body long past the point where the body itself has given up. And that will is fixed on one thing, and one thing only, the shore. Reach the shore, reach the shore. It is the whole of him. And then his hands touch sand, and his knees find the bottom, and he drags himself up out of the surf onto the dry ground. And he finally knows that he has made it, and the will lets go. It has to. That is what it was for. It held him together for exactly as long as it had to, and not one moment longer. And the moment he is safe, the moment the thing he was fighting for is finally under him, it releases, and the body it was holding up, the body that had nothing left of its own, simply stops. I have seen men take 3 steps up a beach and fall as though they had been shot, dead before they were dry, killed by arriving. The stronger the man, the harder his will drove him, and the more completely he had spent himself to reach that shore, and so the more utterly there was nothing left underneath when the will let go. The strong reached the land first, and the strong died first on it, because reaching it was the thing that finally let them stop. And there is one place this happens, more than any other, and it is the cruelest place of all, because it is the very last few feet, the surf. A man fights the whole ocean and reaches the breaking edge of the land, where the waves come apart white and the water is shallow enough to kneel in. And there, in water that would not drown a child, spent past the end of himself, with the sand already under his hands and the will already loosening because he can feel that he is there, he goes down, face down in a foot of water. On the very lip of the shore he crossed an ocean to reach, and the small waves turn him over, and he has not the strength left to lift his own head clear, and he drowns there, ashore and not ashore, in water you could stand up in. More men have been lost in that last stretch of surf than in all the miles of deep sea behind it, because that is where a man finally lets go, not out in the black water where he still believes he has to fight, right at the edge where he believes the fighting is done. Stay with me, because the second killer is quieter, and it is the cold, and it did not stay in the water where he left it. A man comes out of that sea soaked through to the bone, and the cold has been in him for hours, deep in him, and here is what he believes. I am out of the water now, so the cold is behind me, and it is not. The sea let him go, but the cold came with him, in his wet clothes, in his frozen flesh, and on an open shore with the wind coming off the water. That wind finds a wet man and strips the warmth off him without mercy. But that is not even the worst of it. The worst of it is what he does now that he is out. In the water, he could not stop. To stop in the water was to sink, so his body was forced to keep moving, and the moving made a little heat, and the moving kept him awake. On the land, at last he can stop. He can lie still. And the instant a freezing, spent man lies still on cold ground, he stops making the only heat he had, and the cold that followed him. A shore closes over him just as surely as the water would have. Slower, maybe, but just as sure, and with no one to see it happen and pull him out. And the third killer is the gentlest of the 3, and it wears the kindest face of all, and it is rest. A man who has crossed that ocean is tired in a way you have never been tired. It is a tiredness that is its own country, and he is on land now, and he is safe, and every part of him says the same soft thing: lie down, just for a moment, just to rest. You have earned it. You have earned it more than any man ever earned anything. And so he lies down on the sand, and he closes his eyes, only for a moment, only to gather himself before the last short walk to the lights he can see up the shore. And a spent, freezing man who lies down and closes his eyes on a cold beach does not open them again. On that shore, sleep and death are the same door, and it opens the same way, softly, with no pain and no fear and no fight. And that is the horror of it. He does not die screaming. He dies resting. He dies believing he is about to get up. I have heard it told by the few who felt it come over them and somehow fought it off, and every one of them said the same thing, that it did not feel like dying at all. It felt like warmth there at the end. It felt like being wrapped up and put to bed. The shaking stops, and a strange soft ease spreads all through a man, and the cold beach begins to feel almost kind, and the far lights up the shore that he was crawling towards stop mattering to him, because here, right here, is fine now. Here is good enough. Here he can finally rest. That ease is the last lie the cold ever tells, and it is the kindest of all its lies, and the deadliest, because a man does not fight a thing that feels like mercy. He lies back into it, grateful, and the ones who lived were the ones who somehow knew that the warmth was the lie, that the very moment the beach began to feel kind was the moment they had to get up and go, and hate every step of it, because the hating was the proof they were still alive. Now hold the two together, the strong man who died in 3 steps, and the tired man who died lying down, because the fix for both is the same, and it is the one thing that saved every man I ever knew to come off that sand alive. There was one I will not forget, because I saw both halves of it in one night. 2 men off the same wreck reached the same beach within an hour of each other. The first was the stronger and the faster, and he came up out of the surf ahead of the other, and he got to the dry sand and he stood there a moment with his hands on his knees, and then he sat down to catch his breath, and then he lay back, just to rest, just for a moment. And that was the last of him. We found him in the morning exactly where he had lain down, peaceful as a man asleep, not 20 yards from a fisherman's hut with a fire in it. The second man was weaker and slower and half dead when he crawled out. But he had been on a boat once with an old hand who had told him the thing that sounds like madness, and it was in him. And so when he reached the sand and every part of him screamed to lie down, he did not. He got up. He made himself get up, cursing and weeping, and he did not let himself stop, and he did not let himself lie down, and he kept his legs moving and his blood moving, and he dragged himself up that beach to the hut and the fire, and he lived. The strong one rested and died. The weak one refused to rest and lived. And the whole difference between them was one thing understood, that the shore was not the end. Stay with me. Because the reason no one knows this is the same reason it keeps killing. Why does no one tell you? Why is the first thing a man believes about the sea that the shore is safety, the very thing that kills him on it? Because the men who learn the truth learn it on the sand, at the end, with no breath left to pass it on, and the men who find them find only a mystery, a strong man, out of the water, dead on dry land, with no mark on him. And they do not understand it either. They write it down as the cold, or as bad luck, or as a heart that simply gave out, and they never grasp that it was the resting that did it, that the man killed himself by believing he was finally allowed to stop, so it never becomes the thing every child near the water is taught. It stays a secret the sand keeps, and every generation of men fixes its whole hope on reaching the shore, and some of them reach it, and lie down on it, and die. And the cruelest turn of it is what it does to the ones who find them. A man walks a beach after a wreck, hoping against all hope to find the living, and he finds instead a strong young fellow lying peaceful on the dry sand, not a mark on him, near warm-looking, as though he had only stopped to sleep. And something in that is worse than any drowned man hauled out of the water, because the drowned man you can understand. But this one made it. This one won, and you stand over him and you cannot make it fit in your head. And if no one ever tells you the truth of what happened, you carry that not understanding to the end of your own days. The sand keeps its secret, and it costs the living nearly as much as it cost the dead. And here is the hard truth to carry, the one that ought to change how you think about every shore you will ever swim for. Reaching land is not surviving. Arriving somewhere is not the same as being safe there. The line of the shore is not a finish line, however much a drowning man's whole soul insists that it is. It is only the place where one fight ends and a harder one begins. The fight to not lie down, and a great many good men have crossed the whole ocean to lose that second fight in the first easy minute of it. So here is what the old hands knew, and what I hand you now, in case a day comes when you drag yourself out of cold water onto a cold shore, and every part of you is begging to stop. Do not stop. Whatever it costs, whatever your body screams, when your hands find the sand and you know you have made it, you have not made it, not yet, and you must not believe that you have. Do not sit down. Do not lie down. Do not close your eyes for one moment to rest, because that one moment is the door, and it does not open twice. Get up onto your feet however you can, on your hands and knees if you must, and keep moving. Moving makes heat, and moving keeps you awake, and awake is alive. Get up off the wet sand and out of the wind. Strip the wet clothes if there is anything dry to be had. Find a hollow, a wall, a boat, a hut, a hedge of gorse, anything that breaks the wind and holds a little warmth. And do not let yourself rest until you are warm through and long safe. Treat reaching the shore as the beginning of the fight for your life, because that is exactly precisely what it is. And if you are ever the one who finds a man on that sand, hear this too, because it is the other half of it. A man lying still on a cold beach is not past saving just because he looks it. The cold can slow a man so far down that he seems gone and is not, his heart beating so slow and so faint you would swear on your life it had stopped. So you do not give a cold man up for dead because he looks dead. You get him out of the wind and out of the wet. You warm him slow against a living body. You handle him, gentle as glass, and you keep at it long past the point that seems like sense. because more than one man has been left for gone on a shore who would have come back, if only the ones who found him had known that a frozen man is not always a lost one. The hardest saying among the men who did this grim work was also the truest. A man is not dead until he is warm and dead. They did not die because the sea was merciless. The sea had lost, they had beaten it, they were out, they were ashore. They had done the one impossible thing. They died because they believed that doing it was enough, that arriving was the same as surviving, that the shore they had fought for was the end of the danger instead of the middle of it. And I have watched that same lie kill men far from any ocean. The man who reaches the thing he fought his whole life for and lies down in it and is never the same. The soul that endures every hard mile and gives out on the easy one, believing the arriving was the surviving. It is the same law on the sand and off it. The place you were fighting to reach is not the place you are safe. Reaching it is not the end. It never was. I have turned this over more than a man ought to turn over anything, across 50 years of walking away from those beaches, and I have come to believe it is the truest thing the sea ever taught me, and the one that matters most on dry land, where most of you will live your whole lives and never once see a wreck. That the danger was never in the crossing. The danger is in the arriving, in the letting go that comes the instant we believe we have made it. In the rest we grant ourselves the very moment the goal is finally under us. Whatever your ocean is, whatever shore you are swimming for right now, with the last of what you have in you, hear an old man who has stood over the ones who reached theirs and lay down. The reaching is not the safety. Do not lie down when you touch the sand. Get up and keep moving, and do not let yourself rest until you are truly and wholly and warmly through. Because the shore has taken more good men who beat the sea than the sea ever took from the ones who never reached it at all. So tell me, down in the comments, where have you seen it? The thing that survived every hard part and died in the easy one. The goal reached and then lost, because reaching it felt like enough. Put it below. I would like to know I am not the only one who has learned to distrust the moment I finally arrive. Next time, I'll tell you about the slow killer no storm and no shore had anything to do with. The one the ship's officers could watch take a crew apart a little more each week, for months, and could not stop. And the cure for it that sat in the ship's own stores the whole while, if a single man aboard had known how to use it. Until then, mind your fire and never mistake reaching a place for being safe in it.